And hello everybody, today is time for another Rants. Yeah, there's a new one. I promised I would give you one every week, and so far so good. So, here we are, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about another issue in the gaming community. Now, what would that be? Well, that's simple. That is the idea that every game has to have a progression system, which I don't approve. I don't like, but I can see why it's done, but it's been over hyped. Let's just put it that way. Meanwhile, we're gonna be playing a little bit of Destiny. I'm gonna try and get some missions. Well, some what are they called? Well, I don't know what they're called. Activities, actions, adventures. Yeah, so we're gonna do adventures while we wait. While I'm talking. So we'll see. Anyways. So, what is going on? Well, progression systems is this idea that when you're playing generally first-person shooters, you get something every so often. Now, that could be seen as a plus, but it's also something that hampers games. In what way? Well, basically, people keep thinking about games like, oh, it doesn't have a progression system, it's not a game worth playing. If your game is not worth playing without a progression system, your game is not worth anything. What does that mean? Well, think about it. Why would I need, the game is its own reward, right? Like, you play the game to have fun, not to be chasing a hypothetical thing, basically. You're not supposed to just be chasing things, and that's the only motivation for you to play the game. Like, you're not supposed to be unlocking guns all the time. You're not supposed to be unlocking skins. I'm not saying skins are bad, or that, weapon locks are bad, but when you take it as the sole motivation for you to play a game, well, that's a different thing. You know what I mean? It makes things complicated, I guess, because progression systems also do something, which is they turn games into this challenge, this. I don't know how to put it. Let's think of how would you put it. Well, basically, the game just depends on the collection of things, and that means that you're locking content away. And you've seen this in other games, you have to farm so and so game for so long before it's actually playable or something, and it just ends up making things very awkward. You know? It's like, I bought the game, I want to play with the things the game's supposed to give me. Some of them are locked very, very far away. And to make things even worse, sometimes it could be even more complicated in that, well, the game expects you to do a certain thing, like get to level 50 to get the best gun, and that's a problem. When the game expects you to do so many things just to get a gun, and that gun turns out to be meta defining in some way or another, and then it just becomes a chase. It loses the the allure. You're farming for this, and that, I think, part of that is what makes gamers so salty as of late. People get so upset about not getting the unlocks they think they deserve. So they obviously, that makes them try harder. It actually even makes the meta worse, because when you can have fun, have everything unlocked from the beginning, well, yes, there's something there, but Jesus, it's just so upsetting. It just keeps holding things back, and keeps holding things back, and keeps holding things back, and people get salty trying to get games and guns and things that they need. And also, sometimes if it's done in the worst ways possible, it motivates bad gaming etiquette. If you make a game, a weapon that can only be unlocked with headshots, 5 headshots in a match, let's say, and it's a sniper weapon, and it's a game that's super fast-paced, you're gonna have people just wasting their time, because they're gonna hamper you. They're absolutely gonna slow you down while you're trying to play the game, because they're gonna be focused trying to unlock the gun that's supposedly the best one. Meanwhile, the objective, the actual fun game, like for all those people that either don't care about the gun or already have it, they're suffering because of all these people trying to get the gun. Even worse, if it's a competitive match and you have to play in competitive to unlock the things, that's even worse. It's kind of similar to what happens with achievements, which is also like people just trying to get X or Y achievement, and they will do whatever they can to get it, and you're just stuck with a team that's trying to do this thing that's not what's supposed to be part of the match. It makes things awkward, and it's part of why, like, I think progression systems are toxic. Like, the less obvious it is, the better. So something like Overwatch, that's fine. Like, yeah, you leveled up and you got your thing, but like when you think about like Battlefield 1, Jesus Christ, that thing, I don't know how many matches I've hampered trying to get some gun or another, or how many games I've had ruined because I've been trying to, you know, get something myself. Like that 5 headshot gun in Call of Duty, that was a nightmare for everybody involved with me. And the only reason I got it fast was because I got extremely lucky and I had 5 people trying to do the same, and I flanked them, and they were so tunnel visioned into it that they couldn't react to me. So the game is like, the idea of games with progression systems angers me in a way, because you're just stuck there with these requirements, random requirements that extend the game artificially. Like, this is gonna sound so weird, like, back in my day, I used to play Quake 3 Arena because that was pretty much the game to play, right? Quake never had a progression system. You unlocked everything, and you could have all the weapons at the same time and whatnot. And the reason you played Quake was because the mechanics were so good, because it was so fun to play it. It wasn't because of some arbitrary gated content that's like, well, you can't get this because we say you can't get it, right? In Quake, the progression system was your own skill. It was you getting better with you being able to, I don't know, rocket jump or bunny strafe, or I don't know, use the line gun or whatever, the plasma cannon, whatever. Also, because of that, maps and everything could be designed in any way because everybody had access to the same thing. So it gives more flexibility to players, because like, well, yeah, you can snipe, but everybody can snipe because you don't have to change your loadout. Some games lock you into a loadout like Destiny, and then you have to switch, and it gets slow, and you know. So in Quake, everybody had everything, so the playing field was level. And oh god, in other games now, like now, you have like distinct limitations to things, and that creates metas. Like Destiny right now, it's the most horrible meta in my life, which is meta. That's all the game is, meta. There was this article the other day by was it Kotaku? I think it was Kotaku, and it was basically the best 5 guns in Destiny, and the joke is the 5 best guns in Destiny were the Mida, and the Mida, and the Mida, and the Mida, and oh yeah, let's not forget the Mida. So yeah, it was limiting, and at least in this game, like, okay, fine, they'll nerf the Mida or something's gonna happen to it. I don't think they'll let it go for much longer like it is. But imagine another game like, I don't know, something more static. Let's say, well, yeah, Call of Duty. Like in Call of Duty, switching classes is a mess because you only have 5 slots that you can choose between. Even though you can buy like extra slots, it's not gonna help you much. And those 5 slots might not be suited to what you need at the moment, and you don't know what map you're getting. So you get people that are playing with the gun that's the best everywhere, or the closest best. But you can't be as flexible. So I think that's hampering game design in a way, making it like you have the meta, and it's the only thing that matters. Because of course people want to win. The meta is not bad on itself. Oh god, but it is limiting. It is very limiting because, well, you had like in Hearthstone, which is not a shooter, but whatever, the meta concept applies. In Hearthstone, you have the meta, and until like very early, like a few days ago, it was all Jade Druid. And if you wanted to win, you had to play Jade Druid, because if you played something else like counter Jade Druid, then if you ran into somebody else, you died because all you had were tech options, right? And then you had to choose between one and the other. It was awkward. It was unbelievably like, it was weird having that meta, and it required a nerfing of a lot of things, and that nerfing might not end up as intended, and so there's all these things that happen in like solid like set in stone metas. Whereas in Quake, because you had everything, you could be flexible. You had a map that had like tight corridors, okay, you pull out the shotgun. You were in a part of the map that was like very open, okay, maybe take the assault rifle, and so on and so forth. Now that doesn't happen in games because there's no way to do that without ending up in a very awkward situation where you have to predict the map and the type of opponents and stuff, because you can definitely outgun the meta in certain situations. It's just, it's too much effort at times, you know? Like, so you just pick up a meta and then just do it like that, and there's no other way of doing it, and that's it. So I don't know. I don't like that approach to game design. I think we need flexible metas. Don't become stale simply because of a gun that's like overpowering everything in certain situations. In Destiny, you can switch your loadout as much as you can. It's not as bad as it used to be because now all the guns have the same perks. Like, you're not gonna get I don't know, say a Mida, no, not a Mida. Well, yeah, a Mida mini tool with certain perks, and then a Mida mini tool with other different perks that make that version far superior to the other ones. You're never gonna run into a situation like that where, you know, you had to like farm for a gun or the gun that worked in the meta at that certain time, and then it would get nerfed, and then you were screwed because there was no other way of doing this. So that's the thing I think I'm trying to argue for, right? Like, very undynamic metas make for very difficult games, or very difficult balancing, because that's the other thing. Think of Destiny, like, you would use a far wider range of guns if you could actually use all those guns, right? Like, if you were like told, well, this is the only thing that works. Oh god. If you could switch faster, if you had more than 3 loadouts, which the 3 loadout thing, that is a console gamer's issue. What do I mean? Well, the only reason we have 3 gun loadouts is because it's easier to switch between 3 guns and grenades in consoles, because you don't have the 1 to 8 key, right? Well, keys. So that really limits the control situation. I mean, you have options. People have tried it, but it's clunky and it's difficult. In, like, say, Quake, you just press 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or whatever you needed, and you were there. You had the gun, like, 1 out of 10. Nowadays, with the new games, it's way harder to do that, simply because, well, oh yeah, look at this toy. It's just not conducive to that. The control is awkward, and I think that's the one thing that's like holding a lot of us back. The lack of flexibility in games. I mean, it's also limiting the design space if you think about it, because, well, how are you gonna do things? Like new guns, different guns that do different things. If everything is limited to 3 gun setups, it's difficult. It's awkward, and it's one of the things I don't like. I don't know. So, going back to the progression system, because that was the point of this. is that progression systems exacerbate this, like make it even worse, basically. Why? Well, because if the thing you need is locked all the way at like level 50 and you're level 2, you're getting owned by people that already got to level 50 and you're gonna quit. Because a lot of games do this thing where like the best guns are gated behind like the high levels. Because it makes sense if you have a progression system to make things more rewarding the further down you get into it. But at the same time, you're hurting the beginners, the new people, the casuals, okay? Which makes for awkward things. You know, like how can I put it? Like the more your guns are limited, the worse your experience is gonna be in the beginning, obviously. Because everybody that actually played for like ages are gonna be way more powerful. They're gonna be buffed. They're gonna be like a lot of things, and they will feel like they deserve it, like it's owed to them, of course. So what do? Do you nerf the powerful gun that everybody like had to work like super a lot for it, or do you just, you know, leave it be the most powerful thing and risk making your players weak? Right? What's your option? Like, how can you do this without like angering someone? It's a no-win situation because if you make the bigger guns just standard guns, you risk having people complain that that there's no point to the progression system. If you make it too powerful, then the casual people will have issues with it because they don't have the time to get to level 50 and they're just gonna get destroyed by anyone that's like level 100 or whatever. It just makes for a miserable experience. Now, you could do the cheat thing as as a game designer and make it so lower level players have certain damage buffs. Then the gun feels like weak against low level players and super strong about like people your level, and then that will encourage people to not level up, thus defeating the point. That's the thing with progression systems. They're very complicated to do right. If you tie it only to cosmetics, that's not so bad, but even cosmetics can make people go like super crazy about them. You see people that are like, well, no, I need to get this shader or get this whatever. Oh, you can see it in Destiny. People are complaining about the shaders. Shaders do nothing if you think about it. Like, a shader is useless. Yeah, you look cool, but should that shader control your enjoyment of the game? Or should the game be fun on its own by, you know, by its own merits, I mean. I think that's more important. Like, if you have a solid game with solid mechanics, whether you have a progression system or not should not matter. But then you have the perception, which is the thing that I think I talk about the most. Perception in the gaming community is very important. Like, just like with the clone games. Like, clone games, people think that they're very, very, like, okay, there's one that's important, and then everybody else is copying. Which, by the way, I wanted to talk about that with Underground, Player Unknown, Battle, whatever it's called, and the recently updated Fortnite Battle Arena. There's now claims that, well, Battle Arena is copying Fortnite, but that ignores something very important, and that is that Battle Unknown, well, Player Unknown's game is not original. I know he did the Arma mods, but before the Arma mods there was H1Z1 or something. Was it H1Z1 or is this well, there was one that was purely like a predecessor to Battle Arena games. So even the Battle Arena game is not the original one, so they have no right to complain that one is taking the other one from them. It's just fallacy. Also, you can't copyright a game mode or a game concept. That's been made very, very clear. Otherwise, we wouldn't have anything else but Doom or, you know, what's his name? The other game, Jesus, Wolfenstein. So, I find it kind of rich when people complain about that. But perception, going back to perception, that's the thing. That's the problem. It doesn't matter if your game is super, super solid and the progression level, like the progression system is super shallow. People are going to complain about it because, well, people are going to complain. There's this idea, perception, that games without progression systems are bad. I don't know if the idea is that, oh, they didn't put any effort into it, which is just patently false. But people make that argument all the time. And they keep repeating it and repeating it and repeating it, and it's getting kind of old. And, well, what do we do with perception? That's the problem. Like, I don't think there's much we can do about it. There's very, very little that can be done about that. It's a no-win situation. I would argue that players don't always know what they want, but it's not about that. It's about what they think they want and how they communicate it. And they communicate it in the worst ways possible. It's boycotting games, ignoring games just because they look like another game or whatever. There's so many reasons that they will give you. None of them being like the actual reason. They'll just say that it's that. I don't believe even they know why they say what they say, but you know. Welcome to the gaming world. Everybody says something and does something else, including the developers. But yeah, so progression systems again. Back to that. What is worse, a game with only a cosmetic progression system or one that gives you actual guns? That's a tough choice, you know. What could it be? What could be the right answer for that? I think cosmetics is the best option, because it makes people less toxic. If your progression system is tied to mechanics, oh, that's gonna be bad. Because it's either gonna be like, oh well, you have to get this certain gun, and getting this certain gun requires these certain actions that fall outside of the basic gameplay of the game. Then you're gonna have very angry players, and one or two things: salty players and toxic players. People that can't get it because either they don't have the time, or the drive, or whatever, or people that that want it at all costs, and that makes for a very, very complicated thing. Now, I'm not talking about loot systems like Destiny. Destiny has its own loot system, it has its own things. That's not entirely bad, you know. The problem is more like with things like Call of Duty and how it unlock the guns, or Battlefield 1, or, well, pretty much any Battlefield, since it's had its thing. Like, don't tell me I can't get this gun, which I paid for, by the way, because I haven't done this certain activity. I know it's supposed to be like some kind of training, but you're just gonna give me tunnel vision. And I'm gonna try and run into any map in Battlefield with a shotgun trying to unlock that other gun that I want. That's happened before. So it creates awkward situations, and it's one of the reasons gaming, like, lately feels so weird. Like, it's a little bit oppressive. Let's put it that way. The system rewards tryhardiness. A progression system that rewards you with certain, like, specific actions will always lead to people being toxic. There's no way it won't. Simply because, well, that's what the game is going to demand from you. And makes it for a very, very stale experience. If everybody has to do the same things and they keep hampering the game, eventually the game is going to suffer. One example could be... What could be a good example of a progression system that's oppressive, besides Battlefield 1? I'm trying to think. Call of Duty comes to mind, because some of the guns are, like, really good, and you have to get them. And then you have the prestige system, which takes it back from you, so you have to again go through it. And then, God, tying cosmetics from those guns into in-game activities and abilities and stuff, just make it worse. Because it's like, okay, you have to use this clearly inefficient gun or whatever thing to unlock this other thing, right? So now you have someone that's dead set on getting their gun back or whatever, and they're doing all these stupid things like, I don't know, running around with a melee knife trying to get the gold, the diamond camo, or things like that, and then it just becomes silly and ridiculous. And it's toxic, and it's bad game design, and it's a bad idea overall. So that's an example of a very bad progression system. I mean, there's worse, obviously. Like, right now, a very bad one. Ironically, it's in a game I love, and it's, whatchamacallit? Fortnite. Fortnite, the Save the World campaign has a very, very bad setup for how it works, its progression system. Its progression system is dependent on llamas. And that's the other thing. When you tie it to money. Yeah, that's even worse. Yeah, when it's tied to money. So, you have loot boxes, right? And you need those loot boxes to have the items you need to succeed, right? So someone with a blue weapon, green weapon, sometimes might end up having a worse situation. Might be in a worse situation, I guess, than someone that dedicated themselves to, you know, just playing the game and having fun, against someone that actually spent money on the things, which make for very awkward gaming. Like in Fortnite, you have this issue with llamas, right? You need traps, but your traps are not coming out, so you might feel tempted to buy a llama box. Well, a bunch of silver to buy a bunch of llamas that have guaranteed 10 traps, or, you know, whatever. One of those things. And that's just a way to milk your money out of you. And it's a problem in a lot of games, especially free-to-play ones. Free-to-play ones obviously need a way to monetize, but the way you go about it can be game-breaking. You know? So, that's the other thing. Like, progression systems also encourage greedy developers in ways that are very, very, very bad for the rest of us. Think of, what's this called? Candy Crush? Where to get lives, you need to, like, either wait for ages, or you have to, you know, wait and be lucky. Or you pay money and you win. And that pisses people off, because obviously it's not the best player, it's the player with the most money and biggest wallet that gets lucky, or, well, doesn't get lucky, they get what they need or want. Again, I destroyed a hero in Fortnite. It took me ages to get it. So we're back. We just had a small leak that needed to be plugged, but that's been taken care of, so no worries there. Don't worry about it. We're fine. We are fine. Anyways, so game progressions. Systems. So yeah, the problem is that when they're tied to things that are important to the game, and just hamper it because either you're not being generous enough, or because they are designed to use only, you know, things like money to progress, or time, and you offer a way to skip it through money. That's the problem. When things are tied like that, and they just make things worse for everyone, okay? The biggest problem with games is precisely... oh god. Is precisely that when the developer gets too greedy and they tie the progression system to money or time or both. And it's... I think it's hampering things. So I think I would rather have a progression system that's only cosmetic, because that would allow for further, like, expansion of the game without, you know, making it too demanding on time, which is going to cost you players in the long run. Also, that's a thing, like, progression systems make it so that it gets to a point where everybody that, like, has been in the game from day one is way too advanced, both in skill and everything else. To the point where, well, you're kind of screwed. Whoa. Where it's just awkward, right? Like, how are you going to deal with things if things require like 5 levels of whatever, or you have to be level something something, and then on top of that you also need to, I don't know, grind the good guns, and the good guns are very 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 difficult to get because then you're level 1, you don't have the skills required, everybody's killing you all the time because you don't have the good gear. So progression systems might seem like a good idea, but it gets to a point where either A, once your game reaches a certain age, you have to let them go, but that's just going to cause more problems. Because then people that work for those things are going to be like, oh my god, I wasted like so many hours of my day into getting this, and I got nothing out of it. And see where it leads? Like, it's this toxic gaming idea that, you know, get good and all that. Like, oh, well, you can just get good until you can get the gun. Yeah, but how can you get good if you don't have time to even learn about the game? Because the game expects you to be, like, you know, this super try-hard person. So, that's the core of the problem with progression systems, in my opinion. With that whole mess of, well, they don't give you enough to get good. They don't give you a motivation to get good after a certain point, and in the end they just limit content that you already paid for. That's the biggest thing, that things are gated for things that you already paid for. I paid to get that sniper, why can't I get it? It's annoying. It happens a lot, especially Call of Duty is very guilty of that, very very guilty of that. But what are we gonna do? Battlefield is worse, now that I think about it. And we're not even going to touch on the silly games that, like, require things just because, well, they're all free to play and super money grabby and things like that. Like, I don't know if you remember Battlefield Heroes, that game was terrible because of that. You got the guns, even the paid ones were just like limited time unlocks, so it ended up creating this idea that, oh, you're using this gun, we're gonna, like, have problems with you because you obviously paid for it, and yeah, no. The game was hampered, like, it was killed by that. Like, this whole idea of getting gear for stuff, for progression. You want to make a good game? Make a good game that doesn't need a progression system, then tack a progression system that's cosmetic or non-relevant to the gameplay part of the game. Right? That is okay. I think that could lead to some interesting gaming ideas. Just don't tie it to success. Never mind pay to win. Just play too much to win is just as bad. Like having people, oh, you're not level 7 billion and ground every single weapon. Well, guess what? You're not winning. You're not. I don't know. You're not getting anything from this game. That's just as bad, honestly. It's terrible game design. It just makes things miserable for everyone involved in it. I don't know. There's so many other ways you can make an interesting game. Make an engaging game that has good mechanics. Make a game that has good guns, but you don't need to farm them. So on and so forth. Okay. So, that is the biggest problem with progression systems, that they limit gaming space. They limit accessibility to the game, which I know it's a dirty word for gamers, but that's another issue that we'll talk eventually about. But yeah, no, don't gate your system on you. Like, don't hamper your own game just because you want to make something happen, right? Overwatch is pretty decent. You don't have to unlock players. you don't have to unlock anything. If you want to play with just what is available, you can do it. If you want to play with, I don't know. That's the thing. Like, I think that's the biggest problem. The game just feels off when your gaming systems are bad. So just tie it to something good. Overwatch did it. All you need is play, like your skill, and not even that, depending on the character. But yeah, so Overwatch is pretty good for it. Another game that's pretty good for it, even though it has gated content. Well, has a progression system, but it's not linked to any like monetary anything. Is Titanfall 2? But the funny thing about Titanfall 2 is that some of the best weapons are available from the beginning. Like, there's really good guns at the beginning that you can use. Actually, a lot of the guns that you can enable just don't need, like, they're not good at all. Like, for example, think of the double take. That gun is trash, and it's a progression gun. The Kraber, whatever you want to call it, it's also a progression gun, and it's trash. There's so many things, like so many stuff that you don't need that just exist for messing with you. But it's fun. The guns are fun. Even the bad ones are fun to use. Maybe because they have an interesting game mechanic or something. And it keeps happening over and over and over again with games that just want to get everything. Okay. So yeah, I think that's the thing. The biggest problem with games right now is the progression systems are too punishing or too greedy or just plain make no sense. Like in shooters I don't think should have progression systems, but that's just my idea. They don't even indicate how good you are, they only indicate how much you play. If they're XP based, like Overwatch, like there's things that are far more valuable in Overwatch than your character level, more like your ranking. Your ranking is more important in a way, and even that can arguably be said it's mostly grinding. So, you know, I don't know which one is better. It's a tough choice, right? Or just make it silly and kind of sort of useless, like in Titanfall. Titanfall 2 has, I think, if you have to have gated content, that's one of the best ones. It's relatively fast as a game to get everything, so you don't have to, you know, like go through thousands and thousands of hours of gameplay. You can use in-game credits that you unlock just from playing to buy the unlocks. So that's good, right? And they're not linked like in Call of Duty to other things. So I think that's good. I think it's a progression level system that talks to me in a more meaningful way. As in, well, you do this and you are getting like stuff, but eventually that stuff is going to be irrelevant. You're going to unlock everything. But here, have some money and unlock the things you want, and then just have the progression system for cosmetics and the random weapons that you don't use every time. Also, here, have 10 loadouts that you can like randomly switch between, so that's not too bad either. So yeah, we can make progression systems that are not punishing and arbitrary and stupid. We just have to try, and that's the problem. The more you want your system to have, your game to have a progression system, I think the more you are bound to screw it up. Build your game, make sure it has solid shooting, solid everything, and then afterwards, make sure that you have whatever you want from it. Oh, you want to unlock cosmetics? That's fine. You want to unlock guns? Make sure that some of the guns you give people at the beginning actually work. Even at the risk of making them better than everything else. But if you do that, well, make the other guns good. Don't just make them random. It just, I don't know, make good games and then find a way of adding your system, if you must have it. As for the community, well, maybe guys consider that you don't need one. Maybe you don't need every game to have a progression system, because maybe the game's own existence is its own reward. I know that's a controversial statement, but you know, well, there you go. That's a thing that you could arguably do. I think we shouldn't be this bound to the idea that things should be done a certain way. We've done that over and over and over again. It just leads to like angry people getting angry at games because of random things. Maybe we just have fun. Oh, damn it. Maybe we just have fun with a game and we don't need it to be like super sweaty. Crazy, right? I know. A game doesn't have to be sweaty. Which also brings me to another thing I want to talk about, and it's going to be probably the thing I'm going to talk about next week. And that, my friends, is games that are competitive games not by design, but by marketing. Okay, games that demand things like that, like games that were meant to be competitive and the community made competitive and then demand the developers to make competitive, or just shoving competitive into any form of game without thinking about it. Those two things are a problem. I don't like it, and we're gonna talk about that. So in any case, this was some Better Video Games. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.